Alright guys, we're back in my garage for another video, and today we're going to be talking about suspension again. Previously I made a video talking about how to set up your suspension if you're focused on straight line acceleration, so if you're looking at something to set up your car for drag racing or roll racing, I'll have that video linked down in the description so you guys can check that out. This video is specifically going to be focused on handling, so if you do autocross, road racing, track time, or even if you're just interested in making it handle better on the street, this video is going to help you decide what kind of mods you might want to do and what kind of setup you should go for in order to give you the best handling possible. So hopefully this video will help you out if you're in that group. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So let's talk about handling. This is something that I'm definitely very passionate about, and I've had some experience on the track as well as just, driving my car on back roads and things like that. So I want to share with you guys the things that I've learned and what I typically recommend if you're focusing on improving the handling for your car. So the first thing that you want to focus on is seat time. And this is something that a lot of people don't really consider as the first step. But if you don't know what's wrong with your car or what you want to improve, then there's nothing that you can do to decide what the right mod would be. And typically people don't know to think about it that way, especially if you're just driving your car on the street. It's kind of hard to decide what you want to improve. You know how you want the car to feel, but you don't necessarily know where it's giving up more. And in this video, we're definitely going to focus as much as possible on actual mechanical grip. That doesn't always translate to what might make the car feel better or feel quicker, but it will help the car get faster times. So the safest way to do this, and what I typically recommend, is signing up for a local autocross. Usually they're like 20 bucks or so. Take your car there, turn off all the nannies, DSC off, and get everything just completely freed up, and drive the car as hard as you can in this little closed course. That'll help you identify where the issues are. Are the front tires sliding too quick? Are the rear tires always kicking out? Is the car swinging left to right too hard, or is it just hard to turn? Whatever that issue is, that'll help guide you into picking the next mod that you want to do on your car. So seat time, seat time, seat time. You can't get too much seat time and then just use that experience to help guide your next steps as far as what you want to do next to your vehicle. Now, the next thing to remember is that tires are the absolute most important thing. Just like always, those are the only things connecting your car to the ground, and everything that you're going to do to your car to improve the suspension is supposed to design the car to optimize the grip that you're getting at your tires. And that starts with running a good aggressive tire. So I recommend getting a summer tire. There are plenty of street tires that work well. You can, of course, get more aggressive depending on where you're going to be driving. If it's 100% on a track or in a closed course, you can run a more aggressive tire setup, and that'll give you better performance. If it's cold, a summer tire will still work because once you heat it up, that's where a majority of the grip will be. But on the street, you probably want something that still drives good in the rain and things like that. So I'll make a completely separate video on how to pick tires. That'll be its own topic that I can talk about for a while. But suffice it to say that you want to make sure you're getting a good tire setup if you want your car to handle well. So now let's dig into the actual suspension. And this is going to primarily focus on how you can set up your car to optimize the grip at your tires. So the first and most important thing is getting a good alignment. Even with the stock suspension, a big improvement will come from aligning your car and designing it to handle better when you're going around turns. The main thing that most people go for first is optimizing your camber. So you can basically add camber plates up front since we don't have factory camber adjustment in the front. And then you can use the factory camber adjustment in the rear from the lower control arm. And that'll allow you to add a little bit of camber and dial it in so that the car can go around a turn a little more quickly. The whole idea behind this is when your car goes around a turn, the whole car leans. And as it leans, it's basically going to roll over onto the tire on that side. And your goal is basically to have the tire with a completely flat contact patch across where it's rolling over the road. So if you add a little bit of camber, that'll make sure that when the car does roll over, the tire is completely flat and square with the road and you're getting as much traction as possible. You don't want too much camber, like thinking of stance kids and things like that. Those guys typically give camber a bad name, but there is an appropriate amount of camber that you can run in order to make sure that your car has as much grip as possible. Usually that's between -2 and -3 degrees. If you have a really aggressive tire setup, it might be more than that. The way that I recommend determining how much camber you should run is basically measuring the temperature across your tire. So you can measure at the left, on the right, and in the middle at any corner. And if you have too much heat on the outside, then that means that you're rolling over the tire and you need to add a little more camber. If you have too much heat on the inside of the tire, then that means you're running too much and you need to reduce your camber. So the goal is to have an even temperature profile, and that way you know that you're running the right amount of camber. So it's something that you can even adjust trackside. If you're going multiple runs at an autocross or a road course, you can make small adjustments based on those readings, and that'll optimize things. Now for toe, you pretty much want zero toe front and rear. This just helps free everything up, especially if you have any long straights. You want the toe to be as close to zero as possible so that the car can just accelerate as fast as possible. It'll also give you a little bit quicker turn in when you're going around a turn, so the car will basically respond a little bit better, and you won't have like the added rolling resistance or slight scrubbing effect that comes from having a little bit of toe. Some people do try to toe out a little bit to help the car rotate, so you can have a little bit of toe out in the front tire, and that'll make the car really want to turn around. I haven't really found that to be an issue in my case. When your camber is dialed in, the car seems to turn pretty well. So that's usually what I do. I just run zero toe front and rear. But if you really want to get, a little bit creative, then you can add a little toe out up front to help the car kick into the turn a little quicker. Now, next, we're going to talk about the struts and springs. And I do recommend stock suspension for most setups. The reason why I recommend stock is because you got to remember the whole point of your suspension is to have some compliance to keep the tire in contact with the ground. So especially on the road, if you're running into any bumps, dips, potholes, and things like that, you want your suspension to help keep pushing the tire down so that you have as much traction as possible due to the tire being pressed into the ground. If you have a really stiff suspension, then that can cause the car to feel nervous. It can skip over bumps instead of having good contact and basically giving you that traction to accelerate the car around the turn. Now, let's say that you've identified an issue with the stock suspension. So if it's swaying too much, maybe that's what I hear a lot of people say. There's too much body roll. Your shocks and springs aren't actually designed to eliminate body roll. If you want to eliminate body roll, you need to upgrade your sway bars. Now, sway bars suck to install, so that's why a lot of people just upgrade their shocks and springs instead of upgrading their sway bars. But that's the whole point of them. If you want something that has less body roll, upgrade your sway bars, and that'll give you much better performance in a straight line and going around turns, and just give you the overall benefit of still having a compliant suspension that can go over bumps and dips and keep your tires in contact with the ground. So just consider that if that's your focus. The other issue that some people have is when you're accelerating or braking, you can run into rubbing issues, especially if you're running a really aggressive tire like an R-Comp or a Slick. Then under heavy braking, you might experience like your front lip rubbing on the ground, or when you're accelerating really hard, you might feel your rear tires rubbing. And in those cases, it typically makes sense to increase the stiffness of your suspension. Now, one easy way to do this is running adjustable shocks. They can adjust dampening or rebound, and that can help keep the car controlled in those scenarios. But in a lot of cases, you'll really just have to upgrade to stiffer springs as well in order to help keep the car as stable as possible, but hopefully not too stiff where you lose more compliance and the car is, not as stable as it should be. Now, after that, if you really want to take it the next level, you can go with coilovers. The biggest benefit that I've seen from these is having individual adjustment on each corner allows you to corner balance the car. I haven't really seen a huge improvement in coilovers versus like a shock and spring setup outside of that, but it does give you a much finer tuning for the balance of the car. And even if you have something above and beyond that, like adjustable end links, that can help put bias on your sway bar. So it just gives you a lot of room to fine tune how the car performs and reacts when you're going around a turn. It's something that most people really don't adjust very often. You might set it up when you install the coilovers and then just drive the car for 50,000 miles. So that's why I say like the adjustment typically isn't needed. But if it's something that you want to mess with at every track or, based on how many left turns versus right turns you have and things, you can kind of bias your car one way or another. That's where coilovers and adjustable end links and those different fine tuning options can come into play and give you a little bit of an edge. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about are control arms. And this is probably one of the things that I feel like are the most overlooked in our community. I know a lot of super guys are starting to run them, and it's really popular with the M3 and M4 crowd. But for some reason, regular BMWs like B58 guys seem to overlook these, and they provide a huge benefit. One big thing, of course, is most control arms are adjustable. So that allows you to really fine tune your alignment, and you can get, your toe and camber settings exactly where you want them. Another nice thing is control arms tend to come with completely solid bushings, so that helps eliminate some of the slop in your suspension and just makes things feel a lot more direct and just easier to manage and consistent when you're going turn after turn after turn. But probably the biggest thing that I like from my front control arms is the roll center correction. The whole purpose of roll center correction is to basically raise up your roll center to bring it closer to in line with your center of gravity. Your center of gravity and your roll center basically work as a pendulum. So your car is basically going to rotate around your roll center, and your center of gravity is going to determine how much it rolls. If you bring your roll center up closer to where your center of gravity is, then that minimizes body roll without doing anything else. And especially if you've lowered your car, you can potentially move your roll center down underneath the ground. And so by raising it up above the ground, of course, that's bringing it much closer to where your center of gravity is and just makes the car more stable. So a lot of those negative aspects that can come with lowering the car can be improved pretty significantly by installing some lower control arms that raise the roll center up. So that's something that's just really overlooked. I think it provides a huge benefit. When I actually added my control arms, I reduced how much camber I was running up front because the front was just getting so much traction and reacting so quickly. It was actually making the car like a lot more tail happy. So I reduced the camber to help bring things back more neutral. But yeah, it's just a really nice modification to have. You don't want to extend it if you have an X-Drive car because those front axles can't handle being pushed out too far. And I know that's kind of a secondary adjustment that you can get with that front control arm as well. If you increase the length of it, then it increases your camber. But basically what I do is I use my camber plates for camber adjustment, and then I just installed the control arms at the stock length to help take advantage of that roll center correction. So a lot of different things in the suspension geometry kind of come into play up front to help my car react the way I want it to. And that's something that I would definitely recommend for anybody that wants their car to rotate freely. Now, the last thing we want to talk about is an LSD. I don't know if you really would call this a suspension component, but this is definitely something that can help your car perform well around a track. My only problem with it is the cost. Typically, they start around $2,500 for, the regular M Performance kit, and it goes up over $3,000. While it does provide a significant improvement in performance when going around a turn, it's not necessarily something that I feel like you have to have. It'll provide a significant improvement, but at a significant cost. So there are other like cheaper mods that you can do first before installing an LSD if you want to be able to, enjoy better performance without spending that much money. But if you have it, it's definitely something that works well. Every time you go around a turn, your car is going to lean to one side, and that's going to help basically bias your power distribution to the side that has the most traction. So it's a huge benefit. When I installed mine before going to a track day, it just made the car whip around the turns so much more quickly, and you can definitely feel the improvement immediately when that outside wheel can actually pull the car around and you're not worried about the inside wheel spinning. So I might make another video more detailed talking about LSDs, but just suffice it to say it is a significant improvement at a significant cost. And if you have the budget for it, I definitely recommend it. So yeah, hopefully that answers majority of your questions. Sorry, this video kind of ended up being a little longer than I expected, but like I said, I'm definitely passionate about handling and getting a car around a road course. I'll be doing more videos in the future with the 340i. I'll be taking it to the track as close to stock as possible to kind of get a baseline and then doing some modifications from there. So stick around for that if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing. But a lot of the modifications I've done to the 4 Series, the excessive lowering and things like that kind of work against me when I'm focused on handling. And it's just nice to have the 3 Series as more of a blank canvas and I can prioritize performance. Whereas with this car, I kind of did a lot of stuff just for looks because that's my style. But yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.